Hi there, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is April 13th. Mid-April has a pulse to it. Not full bloom, not abundance, but momentum. The soil isn't cold anymore. Just cool enough, though, to make you hesitate for half a second before kneeling. The forecasts are checked more than once. You tell yourself you're only stepping outside to see how things look, and then something catches your eye. A bud that wasn't there yesterday. A bit of green pushing through last year's stems. You crouch, you brush something back, and the next thing you know, an hour has disappeared. Mid-April does that. It pulls you forward without quite delivering anything yet. Boots stay by the door. Tools don't quite get put away. You're not finished with winter, but you're no longer standing still either. Something has begun. Not loudly, but unmistakably. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day in 1895 that the botanist Roxana Stinchfield Ferris was born. Roxana grew up on a farm in Sycamore, California, a small town in the Central Valley. She audited classes at the University of California, Berkeley, and then found her way to Stanford's Dudley Herbarium, working with a collection of pressed plants. Roxana would spend 47 years there. She worked with specimens from dry hillsides and distant valleys, mounted, labeled, and carefully kept, creating order among thousands of lives flattened into paper. But Roxana didn't stay indoors. She traveled into Mexico, collecting plants from deserts and coastal bluffs, pressing them between sheets of newspaper and carrying them home by hand. Over a lifetime, Roxana collected more than 14,000 specimens herself and cared for tens of thousands more. And she co-edited the Illustrated Flora of the Pacific States, 4 volumes that named what grew across the American West. Later in her 70s, Roxana wrote field guides to Death Valley wildflowers and the blooms of Point Reyes, books that made remote places feel reachable. Roxana died in 1981 at the age of 85. Her herbarium work at Stanford is still consulted today, and the species Chlorogallum pomeranianum ferrisii carries her name. Roxana pressed plants until the end. A woman who saw deserts not as empty, but as full of names, waiting to be known. And it was on this day in 1838 that the English architect John Dando Sedding was born. John grew up in Devonport, a naval town on England's southwest coast. As an adult, he fell in love with gardening, and at the end of each workday, he would step off the train and run straight to his garden. Coat off, wife rose at the door, 4 children inside, spade quickly in hand. John was a happy warrior, famously cheerful, quick with a joke, more cottage than cathedral in spirit. Even when designing massive churches, John never lost that homely air of an English country gardener. To John, gardens and houses were like old friends, each shaping the other. John trained as an architect, specializing in churches, but he also designed homes with a deep respect for craftsmanship, where nature was his muse, as it was for his friend, William Morris. John drew careful sketches of ivy, poppies, and lilies from his own garden beds, and he used them for his work with wood and stone. His carvings felt so lifelike, they seemed to breathe. His masterpiece is Holy Trinity Church on Sloane Street in London, and it still stands today. In 1891, while working on a church restoration in Somerset, John died suddenly. He was 52. His wife Rose fell ill within the week and followed him. John and Rose are buried together in the churchyard at West Wickham, near the garden he ran to after a long day's work. In today's Unearthed Words, we hear an excerpt from the Irish poet Seamus Heaney, born on this day, April 13th, in 1939. Seamus grew up on a farm in County Derry, a place of bogs, potato drills, and late summer fruit. Here's an excerpt from his poem, Digging, from his collection, Death of a Naturalist. Between my finger and my thumb, the squat pin rests, snug as a gun. Under my window, a clean, rasping sound when the spade sinks into gravelly ground. My father digging. I look down till his straining rump among the flower beds bends low, comes up 20 years away, stooping in rhythm through the potato drills where he was digging. By God, the old man could handle a spade, just like his old man. But I've no spade to follow men like them. Between my finger and my thumb, the squat pen rests. I'll dig with it. Seamus watched his father in the flower beds and knew he would never dig the way his dad did. So he found another way in, the one that was always his. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Home Herbalist by Pip Waller. It's Herbs and Kitchens Week here on The Daily Gardener, and that means that all of this week's book recommendations are devoted to gardens that feed us, heal us, and bring what grows outside into the kitchen. Pip Waller is a medical herbalist from North Wales who spent years working in clinics, sitting with people whose bodies were tired, inflamed, or out of balance. Home Herbalist grows out of that work. This is not a book about exotic cures or hard-to-find ingredients. It begins close to home. Herbs in the garden beds, herbs along the hedgerow, and herbs in pots by the back door. Pip writes about how she came to this work through her own family. Her parents were facing health problems and were concerned about the medicines their doctor was suggesting. They decided to approach an herbalist. Pip writes, they began taking herbal remedies routinely, and the results were incredible. My father was even able to avoid surgery. Pip was so drawn to the subject, she went on to study herbal medicine formally and spent decades in practice. The work she describes in this book is small, repeatable, and close at hand. Teas made slowly for unsettled stomachs, salves for bruises and tired hands, elderflower in June, nettles in early spring, and calendula gathered at midsummer. This is a book for anyone who keeps a basket by the back door for what the garden offers, and who likes to carry that offering a little further onto the stove, into a jar, or onto a spoon. And finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day in 1880 that the Scottish plant hunter Robert Fortune died in London. He was 67. Robert did not collect plants the polite way. He slipped into China, a country closed to the outside world. He learned the language, moved carefully, and bluffed when he had to. Robert was gruff, impatient, and convincing, and more than once, His confidence was the only thing that kept him alive. Robert went looking for tea on behalf of England and proved that green tea and black tea came from the same plant. The difference was all in the processing of the leaves. So Robert carried seedlings and seeds and even growers who knew the craft. And while many plant hunters are remembered for one great introduction, Robert returned with armfuls: wisteria, winter jasmine, tree peonies, azaleas, bleeding heart, kumquat, and many more. After all the disguises, after all the danger, after all the moments that could have ended him, Robert did something few of his peers managed to do. He came home. And so it was that on this day, back in 1880 in London, Robert was no longer an explorer or a spy or a legend. He was simply a husband, a father, and a gardener, a fortunate man, at last at rest. As we close the show today, remember there's a particular kind of energy that lives in mid-April. Not bloom, not payoff, just commitment. Errands get shorter, sleeves roll up. Dinner waits a little longer than it should. You walk outside to check one thing and end up staying until the light thins and your husband comes looking for you. The beds still look spare. The trees are only just considering leaf. Some plants haven't shown themselves at all, and still you're out there, adjusting, planning 3 steps ahead of whatever the weather allows. Mid-April doesn't reward you yet. It just asks if you're in. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.